On February 9th, 2022, at 11:47 p.m., in a small apartment in Knoxville, Tennessee, my heart stopped for 8 minutes. I was 27 years old. I had been going to church my entire life. I sang on the worship team every Sunday morning. I knew every hymn, every praise song, every word to every prayer. If you had asked anyone at my church about me, they would have told you I was a faithful servant, a good Christian, someone who loved Jesus. But they didn't know the truth, and honestly, neither did I. That night started like any other night. I came home from work, made some dinner, scrolled through my phone for a while. I remember feeling tired. Not just physically tired, but tired in a way I couldn't explain. Like something inside me was worn down to nothing. I'd been feeling that way for months, maybe years, but I kept pushing it aside. I told myself I was fine. I told myself I was blessed. I told myself that as long as I showed up on Sundays, as long as I sang the songs and said the prayers, everything was okay. Around 11 o'clock, I started feeling strange. My chest felt tight. My hands were shaking. I thought maybe I was just stressed. Maybe I needed to sleep. But then the tightness got worse. My heart started pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I tried to take a deep breath, but I couldn't. It felt like something was crushing me from the inside. I grabbed my phone and called my friend Marcus. He lived 2 blocks away. I could barely get the words out. "Something's wrong," I told him. "I can't breathe right. I think I need help." He said he'd be right there. I hung up and sat down on the couch, trying to calm down. I kept telling myself it was just a panic attack. I'd had them before. This was just another one. It would pass. But it didn't pass. My vision started to blur. The room felt like it was tilting. I could feel my heartbeat getting weaker, slower, like it was forgetting how to work. And then I felt this cold sensation spreading through my chest, down my arms, into my legs. It was like ice water filling my veins. I heard Marcus banging on the door, shouting my name. I tried to stand up, but my legs wouldn't move. I tried to call out, but no sound came. And then everything just stopped. The pain stopped. The fear stopped. Everything stopped. For a second, I thought I was fine. I thought whatever it was had passed. But then I realized I wasn't sitting on the couch anymore. I was standing in the middle of the room, looking down at my own body. My eyes were half open, my face was pale, my chest wasn't moving. Marcus had kicked the door open. He was kneeling next to me, shaking my shoulders, yelling at me to wake up. I could see his mouth moving, but I couldn't hear him. It was like watching a movie with the sound turned off. He pulled out his phone and started yelling into it. I knew he was calling 911, and that's when I knew. I was dead. I had always thought I was ready for this. I had always thought that when I died, I would go straight to heaven. I had been baptized, I had prayed the sinner's prayer, I had served in the church, I had done everything I was supposed to do. But standing there, looking at my own body on the floor, I didn't feel peace. I didn't feel joy. I felt terror. Because I realized, in that moment, that I had never really known Jesus at all. I had known about him. I had sung about him. I had talked about him. But I had never actually known him. And then the room disappeared. I don't know how to describe what happened next. It wasn't like walking through a door or falling through a floor. It was like everything that made up reality just unraveled, and I was pulled through the gap. 1 second I was in my apartment, and the next second I was standing in a place I can't even explain. It was bright, but not like sunlight. It was bright in a way that made everything else I'd ever seen look like shadows. And that's when I saw him. I knew it was Jesus before he even spoke. I don't know how I knew, I just did. He was standing in front of me, and the light was coming from him. Not around him, from him. And when I looked at his face, I felt everything. Every lie I'd ever told, every person I'd ever hurt. Every Sunday I'd stood on that stage singing songs I didn't really mean. Every time I'd smiled and said I was blessed when inside I felt empty. Every single moment of my fake, hollow, lukewarm life. I wanted to fall to my knees. I wanted to cry. I wanted to beg for mercy. But I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. All I could do was stand there and feel the weight of his gaze. And then he spoke. His voice wasn't loud, but it filled everything. It was the only sound in existence. He said, "You are lukewarm." That's it. That's all he said. But those 4 words destroyed me because I knew exactly what he meant. I had read that verse 100 times. Revelation 3:16. "Because you are lukewarm and neither hot nor cold, I will spit you out of my mouth." I had always thought that verse was for other people. People who didn't go to church. People who didn't care about God. Not me. I was a worship leader. I was faithful. I was saved. But I wasn't. I had been playing church my entire life. I had been pretending, and God saw through all of it. I tried to say something. I tried to explain. I tried to tell him about all the Sundays, all the songs, all the prayers. but the words wouldn't come. Because deep down, I knew none of it mattered. None of it had been real. In the moment he said those words, everything I believed about myself collapsed. I need to tell you what my life actually looked like before that night, because from the outside, it looked pretty good. It looked like I had it all together. Every Sunday morning, I'd wake up at 7, get to church by 8 for sound check. I was one of the lead vocalists on the worship team. I had a good voice. People told me all the time that I sounded anointed, that they could feel God's presence when I sang. And I loved hearing that. I loved the way people looked at me when I was on that stage. I loved the applause after the last song. I loved seeing my face in the social media posts the church would share every week. I told myself I was serving God. But if I'm being honest, I was serving myself. I loved the spotlight more than the Savior. I was also a small group leader for the college and young adult ministry. Every Thursday night, about 8 or 9 people would come to my apartment. We'd sit in a circle, read a Bible passage, talk about how to apply it to our lives. I'd pray for people, I'd give advice, I'd share scripture. And everyone thought I had this deep, intimate walk with God. But I didn't. The truth is, I barely prayed at all. Maybe once or twice a week, and even then it was usually just before a meal or right before I fell asleep. I'd open my Bible every few days, read a couple verses, and that was it. I had all these Christian books on my shelf that I'd never finished. I followed all the right pastors on Instagram. I'd post a scripture or a worship lyric every now and then, and people would comment with fire emojis and amen, and this blessed me today. But it was all a performance. I knew the motions. I didn't know him. Inside, I felt empty. Hollow, like there was this gap in my chest that nothing could fill. I'd be leading worship on Sunday, singing about the goodness of God, and I wouldn't feel anything. I'd see other people crying, lifting their hands, lost in worship, and I'd wonder what was wrong with me. Why couldn't I feel what they were feeling? Why didn't I sense God's presence the way they did? I thought maybe I just wasn't spiritual enough. Maybe I needed to pray more, read more, serve more. So I'd try for a few days. I'd wake up early and read my Bible. I'd spend an extra hour at church volunteering, but it never lasted. Within a week, I'd be right back where I started, going through the motions, pretending everything was fine. And I got really good at pretending. My mom used to call me every Sunday after church. She'd ask how I was doing, how ministry was going, if I was spending time with God. And I'd tell her everything was great. I'd tell her about the worship set, about my small group, about how blessed I felt. But the truth is, we hadn't had a real conversation in years. I didn't let her get close enough to see what was really happening inside me. I didn't let anyone get that close. I had friends, but I didn't have real relationships. I had people I hung out with, people I served with, people I laughed with, but I never let them see the real me. I never told them about the loneliness, the fear, the shame. I never told them that sometimes I'd lie awake at night feeling like I was drowning, like my life didn't mean anything, like I was just going through the motions, waiting to die. I dated a few people over the years. Nothing ever lasted more than a few months. I think deep down I knew I couldn't give them what they needed. I couldn't be vulnerable. I couldn't be honest. I couldn't let them see how broken I was. So I'd find reasons to end it. I'd tell them it wasn't God's timing or that I needed to focus on ministry. And then I'd go back to being alone. I kept telling people I was okay. I wasn't. And then there were the things I hid, the things I never told anyone. Late at night, after everyone else was asleep, I'd scroll through things I shouldn't be looking at. Porn, Instagram models, Reddit threads. Nothing too extreme, I told myself. Nothing illegal. Just enough to feel something. Just enough to fill the emptiness for a few minutes. And then afterward, I'd feel disgusted with myself. I'd promise God I'd never do it again. I'd delete the apps, clear my browser history, swear I was done. But I always went back. I was also jealous, so jealous. I'd see other people in ministry getting opportunities I wanted, and I'd feel this dark, bitter anger rise up in me. I'd see someone get engaged, get a promotion, buy a house, and I'd smile and congratulate them. But inside I'd be thinking, why not me? What do they have that I don't? I compared myself to everyone. I measured my worth by how many followers I had, how many likes my posts got, how many people showed up to my small group. I remember one time another guy on the worship team messed up during a song. He missed his cue, fumbled the lyrics, and afterward he was so embarrassed. And I felt glad. I actually felt happy that he failed because it made me look better. I didn't say anything to him. I just let him sit there feeling terrible because somewhere deep inside, I enjoyed it. I hid all this under the mask of ministry. I thought I was getting away with it. I thought as long as no one knew, as long as I kept showing up on Sundays, as long as I kept playing the part, Everything would be fine. I thought God would overlook it. I thought grace covered everything, so it didn't really matter how I lived during the week. I could do whatever I wanted in private, and then on Sunday I could sing about Jesus and everything would be okay. But it wasn't okay. And God was trying to tell me that. I remember this one Sunday, our pastor preached on Revelation chapter 3, the letters to the 7 churches. And when he got to the letter to Laodicea, I felt something shift inside me. He read the verse. I know your deeds, that you are neither cold nor hot. I wish you were either one or the other. So, because you are lukewarm, neither hot nor cold, I am about to spit you out of my mouth. And for a second, I felt it. This sharp, convicting feeling in my chest, like someone had just called me out by name, like God was looking right at me and saying, this is you. But I pushed it away. I told myself the pastor was talking to other people who didn't go to church, people who didn't care about God, not me. I was fine. I was faithful. I was serving. This wasn't about me. So I went back to singing. I went back to smiling. I went back to pretending. There were other moments like that. Times when I felt the Holy Spirit whisper to me, turn back, repent, stop hiding. During worship rehearsal, I'd feel this weight on my chest, this sense that something was blocking me from God. I'd feel convicted about something I'd done, something I'd said, something I'd looked at, and I'd think, okay, I'll deal with that later. I'll pray about it tonight. But I never did. I just kept going. I kept serving. I kept singing. I kept pretending. And slowly, week by week, month by month, my heart got harder. The conviction got quieter. The guilt got easier to ignore. I didn't know those small choices were slowly killing my soul. The tightness in my chest kept getting worse. It felt like someone had wrapped a steel band around my ribs and was pulling it tighter and tighter, squeezing all the air out of my lungs. I tried to take a breath, but I couldn't. My throat felt closed. My chest felt like it was folding in on itself. I could hear Marcus on the phone with the 911 operator. His voice sounded far away, like he was in another room, even though he was right next to me. I heard him say my address. I heard him say I wasn't breathing right. I heard him say my lips were turning blue. My vision started to blur. The edges of the room went dark, like someone was slowly closing curtains around my eyes. I could see Marcus kneeling beside me, shaking my shoulders, saying my name over and over, but I couldn't respond. I couldn't move. I couldn't even blink. My hands were tingling, that cold, numb feeling that starts in your fingertips and spreads up your arms. I tried to lift my hand, tried to reach for Marcus, but my arm wouldn't move. It just lay there, heavy and useless, like it didn't belong to me anymore. And then my heart did something strange. It didn't stop all at once. It stuttered, like it forgot how to beat. I felt it skip once, twice, and then it just slowed down, slower and slower, until I couldn't feel it at all. The last thing I remember hearing was the sound of sirens in the distance, faint, getting closer, but not fast enough. And then everything went quiet, unnaturally quiet. It wasn't just the absence of sound. It was the absence of everything. No heartbeat, no breathing, no sirens, no Marcus yelling my name. Just silence. Complete, total silence. For a second, I thought I'd blacked out. I thought maybe I'd just lost consciousness and I'd wake up in a hospital bed with Marcus standing over me, telling me I'd scared him half to death. But that's not what happened. Instead, I felt this strange sensation. Like I was being pulled upward. Not physically. I can't explain it. It was like something inside me was separating from my body. Like a thread being pulled out of fabric. Slow at first. Then faster. And then I was above myself. I was looking down at my own body lying on the floor. My eyes were half open, staring at nothing. My mouth was slightly open. My skin was pale, almost gray. My chest wasn't moving. Marcus was pressing his hands on my chest, doing compressions. I could see his mouth moving, but I couldn't hear what he was saying. There was no sound, just that terrible, heavy silence. And I remember thinking, that's me. That's my body. I'm dead. I should have panicked. I should have been terrified, but I felt nothing. No fear, no pain, no sadness. Just this strange, detached calm. like I was watching a movie of someone else's life. I saw the paramedics burst through the door. 2 of them, a man and a woman. They moved fast, kneeling beside my body, pulling equipment out of their bags. The woman placed something on my chest. The man pressed the mask over my face. I watched them work on me, watched them shock my heart, watched my body jerk and then go still again. And I just stood there, watching, feeling nothing. Then something shifted. The room started to fade. Not like it was disappearing, but like it was becoming less real, less solid. The colors drained away, the shapes blurred, and I felt that pulling sensation again, stronger this time. Like something was dragging me backward, away from my body, away from the room, away from everything I'd ever known. And then I was in the tunnel. I don't know how else to describe it. It wasn't a physical place. It wasn't a hallway or a corridor. It was more like a space between spaces, a passage. I couldn't see walls, but I knew I was enclosed. I couldn't see a floor, but I knew I was moving forward. The light was strange. It wasn't bright like sunlight or a lamp. It was more like a glow, soft, diffused, coming from everywhere and nowhere at the same time. But there was also darkness. Not the kind of darkness you get when you turn off the lights. This was deeper, thicker, like it had weight, like it was alive. The light and the darkness existed together in that space, swirling around each other but never mixing. And I was somewhere in between. I didn't feel like I was moving, but I knew I was. It was like being on a train and looking out the window, watching the world slide past you but not feeling the motion. There was no wind, no sound, no sense of speed, just this steady, unstoppable pull forward. And I realized I had no control. I couldn't stop. I couldn't turn around. I couldn't slow down. I was being taken somewhere and there was nothing I could do about it. That's when the fear finally hit me. Not the kind of fear you feel when you're scared of the dark or afraid of heights. This was existential terror, the kind that makes you realize how small you are, how powerless, how completely and utterly at the mercy of something far beyond your understanding. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't know if I was going to heaven or hell. I didn't know if I'd be judged or saved or condemned. I didn't know anything. And that not knowing was worse than any physical pain I'd ever felt. I tried to pray. I tried to say something, anything, to God, but I couldn't form the words. My thoughts were scattered, fragmented, like trying to hold water in your hands. I wanted to cry out for mercy. I wanted to beg for forgiveness. I wanted to scream that I was sorry, that I'd wasted my life, that I'd been a fraud, that I didn't deserve heaven, but please, please don't send me to hell. But nothing came out, just silence. And then I heard it, a voice, low, quiet, almost a whisper. It didn't come from in front of me or behind me. It came from everywhere, from the air itself, from inside my own head. I couldn't tell if it was speaking to me or through me. It said my name, Emily. Not loud, not harsh, just simple, clear, like someone calling me from another room. And when I heard it, I felt 2 things at once, warmth and terror, comfort and dread. Like standing at the edge of a cliff, knowing you're about to fall, but also knowing someone might catch you. I didn't know who was speaking. I didn't know if it was God or an angel or something else. All I knew was that the voice was real, and it knew me. The tunnel kept moving forward. The light got brighter, the darkness got deeper, and I kept being pulled, faster now, towards something I couldn't see. And at the end of that tunnel, someone was waiting for me. The tunnel ended, and I stepped into light. Not the kind of light that hurts your eyes, not the kind you have to shield yourself from. This was different. It was soft and warm and all-encompassing, like being wrapped in something that loved you. And the second I stepped into it, the fear I'd been feeling in the tunnel just disappeared. I looked around, and I was standing in a garden. But it wasn't like any garden I'd ever seen on Earth. The colors were more vivid, more alive. The grass beneath my feet was so green it almost glowed. The flowers, I don't even know how to describe them. They weren't just red or yellow or purple. They were colors I'd never seen before, colors I didn't know existed. And they moved, not swaying in the wind. They pulsed, like they were breathing. The air was perfect. Not too warm, not too cold. And it smelled like everything good I'd ever smelled in my life, all at once. Fresh rain, honeysuckle, bread baking, my grandmother's perfume, all of it mixed together, but somehow not overwhelming, just comforting. There was music, but I wasn't hearing it with my ears. It was more like I was feeling it. It vibrated through my chest, through my bones, through every part of me. It wasn't a melody I recognized. It wasn't a song I could hum. It was more like the sound of joy itself. Pure, unfiltered joy turned into sound. And for the first time since I died, I felt peace. Real peace. Not the fake peace I used to talk about in my small group. Not the kind of peace you force yourself to feel when you're scared or anxious. This was peace that didn't need anything. Peace that just was. I took a few steps forward, and the grass felt soft beneath my feet. I realized I wasn't wearing shoes. I wasn't even sure what I was wearing. It didn't seem to matter. Nothing hurt. Nothing felt heavy. I felt light, free. I looked around trying to figure out where I was. There were trees in the distance, tall and golden, their leaves shimmering like they were made of metal but soft like fabric. There was a path ahead of me, winding through the garden, disappearing into a soft haze of light. And that's when I saw him. A figure standing a little ways down the path, not walking toward me, just standing there, waiting. I couldn't tell if it was a man or a woman. The figure was tall, draped in something that looked like white fabric, but it moved like water, fluid, weightless. Their face was kind, I knew that much. Even from a distance, I could feel the kindness radiating off them. I started walking toward them, and as I got closer, I realized they weren't speaking, but I could hear them. Not with my ears, in my mind, in my heart. It was like they were communicating directly with my soul. They said, "You are safe." And I believed them. I didn't know why. I didn't know who they were, but I believed them. I stopped a few feet away, and they smiled. And when they smiled, I felt this warmth spread through me, like being hugged by someone who actually knows you, someone who sees all of you and loves you anyway. I wanted to ask where I was. I wanted to ask if I was in heaven. I wanted to ask if I was going to be okay, but I couldn't speak. My mouth wouldn't move, and somehow I knew I didn't need to. They already knew what I was thinking. They gestured toward the path ahead, and I understood. Keep walking. So I did. The path curved through the garden, past flowers that leaned toward me as I walked by, past trees that seemed to hum with life. I felt like I was walking through a memory I'd never had, like this place was familiar, even though I'd never been here before, like I was supposed to be here, like I'd always been supposed to be here. The fear was gone, the guilt was gone, the shame, the loneliness, the emptiness, all of it, just gone. And for a moment, I thought everything was fine. I thought maybe I'd made it. Maybe I was in heaven. Maybe God had seen past all my failures and brought me home. But then I heard the voice. It came from behind me. Deep, strong, but not harsh. It was the kind of voice that filled the air without being loud. The kind of voice that made everything else go silent just by existing. It said, "Emily." I stopped walking. My whole body froze, not because I was scared, but because I knew. I knew exactly who that voice belonged to. And the second I heard it, everything changed. The peace I'd been feeling didn't disappear, but it shifted. It became something heavier, something more serious. The warmth was still there, but now there was weight to it, like standing in front of a fire that could either comfort you or consume you, depending on how close you got. And all the things I've been hiding, all the things I'd buried deep down inside me, all the lies and the sin and the selfishness and the pride, all of it started rising to the surface. Not because I wanted it to, but because I couldn't stop it. It was like every secret I'd ever kept was suddenly being pulled out of me, laid bare, exposed in the light. Every lustful thought, every jealous moment, every time I'd smiled at someone while hating them in my heart, every time I'd sung about Jesus on stage while living for myself during the week, every time I'd pretended to care when I didn't, every time I'd said I loved God when I really loved the attention, all of it, every single thing, rising up inside me like a flood. And I couldn't breathe. I turned around slowly, and that's when I saw him, Jesus. He was standing at the edge of the garden just beyond the path. In the light that had been filling the whole place, I realized now it wasn't coming from the sky. It was coming from him. He wasn't glowing like a light bulb. It was more like he was made of light. Like light was his nature, his essence, and it just radiated out from him in waves. Not harsh, not blinding, but undeniable. You couldn't look at him and not know he was holy. His face was kind but serious. His eyes were deep, like they held the weight of every moment that had ever existed. And when he looked at me, I felt everything. Every lie I'd ever told, every person I'd ever hurt, every moment I'd wasted, every chance I'd ignored. He didn't say anything at first. He just looked at me. And I wanted to fall. I wanted to collapse. I wanted to disappear. Because I knew. I knew he saw everything. Every hidden thing. Every secret sin. Every mask I'd worn. Every performance I'd given. He saw all of it, and he wasn't impressed. The garden around me felt different now. The colors were still beautiful, but they felt distant. The music was still there, but it felt muted. Everything that had felt so peaceful a moment ago now felt heavy, serious, like I was standing on the edge of something I couldn't come back from. And then Jesus spoke again. His voice was calm, steady, but it carried a weight that made my soul tremble. He said, "Come." I knew exactly who it was, and I knew exactly what was about to happen. I walked toward him. I didn't want to. Every part of me wanted to run, but I couldn't. My feet moved on their own, like they were being pulled forward by something I couldn't resist. When I got close enough to see his face clearly, I stopped, and he looked at me. Not with anger, not with disgust, but with something worse. Disappointment. Deep, piercing disappointment. And then the garden disappeared. Not all at once. It faded, like someone was slowly turning down the brightness on a screen. The flowers, the trees, the golden light, all of it dissolved into nothing. And suddenly I was standing in darkness. Not the kind of darkness where you can't see. I could still see Jesus. He was still standing in front of me, still radiating light. But everything else was gone. And then the scenes started. They came from everywhere. Above me, below me, all around me, spinning, circling. Like I was standing in the center of a sphere made of glass, and my entire life was being projected onto the surface. But these weren't just images. They were alive. I could feel them. I could smell them. I could hear them. It was like I was being pulled into each moment, forced to relive it, forced to experience it all over again. But this time, I didn't just see what I did. I felt what they felt. The first scene was a Sunday morning. I was on stage, singing. The lights were bright, the congregation was standing, hands raised, eyes closed. I was leading them in worship, singing about the goodness of God, about His love, about His grace. But I could see myself, really see myself, and I could see what was happening inside my heart while I sang. I wasn't thinking about God. I was thinking about how I sounded. I was thinking about whether people were impressed. I was thinking about the girl in the front row who had a better voice than me, wondering if the worship leader would replace me with her. I was thinking about my Instagram post from that morning, wondering how many likes it had by now. And I felt it, the emptiness, the hollowness, the performance. I wasn't worshiping, I was performing. I cared more about being impressive than being surrendered. The scene shifted. I was in the church lobby after service. A woman came up to me, someone I didn't know very well. She was older, maybe in her 60s. She had tears in her eyes. She told me she'd been going through a really hard time. Her husband had just been diagnosed with cancer. She said my singing had touched her heart that morning. She said it reminded her that God was still with her. And I smiled. I hugged her. I told her I'd pray for her. But I could see what I was really thinking. I was thinking about Wunsch. I was thinking about getting out of there. I was annoyed that she was taking up my time. I didn't want to hear about her problems. I just wanted to leave. And then I felt what she felt. The hope she had when she walked up to me. The vulnerability. The courage it took for her to share something so painful with a stranger. And then the subtle sting of rejection when she sensed I didn't really care. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell her I was sorry, but I couldn't. The scene just kept moving. Another moment appeared. I was sitting in a small group meeting at my apartment. One of the guys, Daniel, was sharing about how he'd been struggling with doubt. He said he wasn't sure if he believed anymore. He said he felt like God was distant, like his prayers weren't reaching anywhere. And I could see myself. I was nodding. I was looking concerned. But inside, I was judging him. I was thinking, he's just not trying hard enough. He's not committed. He's weak. And then I felt what he felt. The shame, the fear, the desperate hope that someone would understand, that someone would help him. And instead, he felt my judgment. He felt my superiority. He felt alone. The scenes kept coming, faster now. I saw myself scrolling through my phone late at night, watching things I shouldn't be watching, looking at things I'd promised God I'd stop looking at. And I felt the emptiness that came after, the disgust, the shame, the lie I told myself that it didn't really matter, that God's grace covered it, that I'd stop tomorrow. I saw myself at Thanksgiving dinner with my family. My mom asked me how I was really doing. She said I seemed distant. She said she was worried about me. And I lied. I told her I was fine. I told her everything was great. I told her not to worry. And I felt what she felt, the helplessness, the ache of knowing her daughter was hurting but wouldn't let her in, the loneliness of being shut out by someone she loved. I saw myself in worship rehearsal. Another guy on the team missed a cue. He looked embarrassed, and I felt glad. I felt a sick, twisted satisfaction that he'd failed and I had it. I saw myself posting a Bible verse on Instagram, something about trusting God, while I was filled with anxiety and doubt and didn't believe a word of it. But I posted it anyway because it made me look spiritual. I saw myself sitting in church during a sermon on repentance, feeling convicted, feeling the Holy Spirit calling me to change. And I saw myself push it away. I saw myself harden my heart. I saw myself choose comfort over obedience. Every moment, every hidden thought, every secret sin, every time I chose myself over God, every time I chose my reputation over His truth, every time I sang His name while serving my own glory. And the worst part wasn't seeing what I did. The worst part was feeling what everyone else felt. The people I hurt, the people I ignored, the people I judged, the people I used. I felt their pain, their disappointment, their loneliness, their rejection. And I realized something that shattered me. In heaven, hidden sin becomes visible reality. Everything I'd buried, everything I'd covered up, everything I'd pretended didn't exist. It was all real. It was all there. And everyone could see it. The scenes finally stopped. The darkness settled, and I was standing in front of Jesus again, trembling, broken, exposed. And He spoke. His voice was gentle, but it cut through me like a sword. He said, "Emily." I couldn't look at Him. I wanted to disappear. I wanted to cease to exist. The weight of everything I'd just seen, everything I'd just felt, was crushing me. He said, "You lived in my house, but you didn't know my heart." Tears were streaming down my face now. I'd never felt so small, so ashamed, so utterly worthless. He said, "You sang about me, but you didn't walk with me." I tried to speak, I tried to say I was sorry, but the words wouldn't come. My throat was tight, my chest was heaving, I couldn't breathe. And then He said the words I'd been dreading. He said, "You were lukewarm." And I broke. I fell to my knees, I covered my face with my hands, I sobbed. Not just crying, sobbing. The kind of crying that comes from the deepest part of your soul. The kind that feels like it's tearing you apart from the inside. Because I knew He was right. I knew everything He said was true. I had been lukewarm. I had been fake. I had been living a lie. I had spent my whole life pretending to love Him while really only loving myself. And I had wasted it. I had wasted every opportunity, every moment, every blessing, every chance to really know Him. I had thrown it all away for nothing, for applause, for approval, for likes on a screen, for the feeling of being admired, for comfort, for ease, for a fake version of faith that cost me nothing. I had chosen the shallow over the sacred. I had chosen performance over presence. I had chosen religion over relationship. And now, standing before the one who had died for me, the one who had given everything for me, I had nothing to offer Him. No excuses, no explanations. Just the ugly, undeniable truth of what I really was. A hypocrite. A fraud. A lukewarm Christian who had known His name but never known His heart. I couldn't stop crying. I couldn't look up. I just knelt there, broken and ruined, waiting for Him to condemn me. Waiting for Him to send me away. Waiting for Him to tell me it was too late. But He didn't. Instead, He knelt down beside me. I felt His presence close to me, warm and overwhelming. And He said something I wasn't expecting. He said, "But I will show you what your life could have been if you had truly followed me." I looked up at Him through my tears. His face was still serious, but there was something else there too. Something I didn't expect. Compassion. Deep, unshakable compassion. His eyes felt like fire and comfort at the same time, like they could see everything, burn away everything false, but also hold everything broken. I couldn't understand it. How could He look at me with such disappointment and such love at the same time? I tried to speak. My voice came out broken, barely a whisper. I said, "Lord, I thought I was serving you." He didn't respond right away. He just looked at me, and in that silence, I felt something I'd never felt before. Not judgment, not condemnation, but grief. He was grieved. Grieved over what I'd become. Grieved over what I'd wasted. Grieved over the distance I'd put between us. And somehow that grief felt like love. Like He cared so much that my choices actually hurt Him. Like I mattered to Him more than I'd ever understood. Finally, He spoke again. His voice was steady, clear, but gentle. He said, "Emily, you served the idea of me. You didn't serve me." I felt those words sink into my chest like a weight, because I knew exactly what He meant. I'd served the version of Jesus that fit into my life, the version that made me look good, the version that didn't ask too much of me. But I'd never surrendered to the real Jesus, the one standing in front of me now, the one who demanded everything. He continued. He said, "I never wanted your performance. I wanted your heart." Tears kept streaming down my face. I couldn't stop them, and I didn't want to. For the first time in my life, I wasn't trying to hold it together. I wasn't trying to look strong or put together or spiritual. I was just broken. Completely, utterly broken. He knelt down closer to me, close enough that I could see the scars on his hands. The scars he got for me. For my sin. For my pride. For my lies. For every moment I'd wasted. He'd paid for all of it, and I'd treated it like it didn't matter. He reached out and gently lifted my chin so I had to look at him, and when our eyes met, I felt like I was seeing him for the first time. Really seeing him. Not the Jesus I'd sung about on stage, not the Jesus I'd talked about in small group, but the real Jesus, the one who loved me enough to die, the one who loved me enough to tell me the truth. He said, "You feared people's opinions more than grieving my spirit." And I knew he was right. I'd spent my whole life terrified of what people thought of me, terrified of being judged, terrified of being rejected, terrified of being seen as less than. So I'd built this perfect image, this mask, this version of myself that everyone could admire. And I'd convinced myself that if people thought I was a good Christian, then I must be one. But God wasn't fooled. He saw through all of it. He saw the real me, the jealous, insecure, selfish, prideful me. And he'd been calling me to come out from behind the mask for years, but I wouldn't. Because I was more afraid of people than I was of him. He said, "Your life mattered to me, deeply." Those words broke something in me, because I'd always thought God saw me as just another person, just another name on a list, just another soul in a sea of billions. I didn't think I was special. I didn't think I mattered. But hearing him say that, hearing the weight in his voice, I realized I'd been wrong. I mattered to him. Not because of what I did, not because of how I served, but just because he loved me. He loved me before I sang a single song. He loved me before I led a single small group. He loved me when I was hiding, when I was faking, when I was failing. He loved me. And I never really believed that. Not deep down. I believed he tolerated me. I believed he put up with me. But loved me? Really, truly, passionately loved me? I didn't think that was possible. But it was. And I could see it now. In his eyes. In the way he looked at me. In the way he stayed with me even when I was at my worst. I started sobbing again. But this time it was different. It wasn't just grief. It was release. Like something that had been locked up inside me for years was finally breaking free. I said, "I'm so sorry. I'm so, so sorry." And he smiled. Not a big smile. Just a small, sad smile. The kind of smile someone gives you when they've been waiting a long time to hear you say something true. He said, "I know." And then he did something I'll never forget. He reached out and placed his hand on my shoulder. And the moment he touched me, everything changed. The shadows that had been clinging to me, the guilt, the shame, the sin, all of it just dissolved, like light burning through fog. I felt it lift off of me, all the weight I'd been carrying, all the darkness I'd been hiding. It just disappeared. And in its place, I felt love. Pure, overwhelming, undeserved love. It flooded through me like a river, warm and clean and powerful. It filled every empty place, every broken place, every place I'd tried to fill with approval and attention and performance. It filled all of it. And I realized this was what I'd been missing my whole life. This was what I'd been searching for in all the wrong places. This was the presence of God. Not the idea of it, not the performance of it, but the real, actual, living presence of God. And it was more beautiful and more terrifying and more satisfying than anything I'd ever experienced. I felt clean. For the first time in my life, I felt clean. I looked up at him and he was still smiling. And I saw something in his face that I hadn't seen before. Pride. He was proud of me. Not because I'd done anything impressive, but because I'd finally stopped pretending. Because I'd finally let him in. He stood up and I stood with him. The darkness around us started to fade. The garden came back into view. The light returned. The flowers, the trees, the music, all of it came back but brighter now, more vivid, like the whole place was celebrating. And then he spoke again. He said, "Go back, Emily." My heart sank. I didn't want to go back. I wanted to stay here. I wanted to stay with him. I didn't want to go back to that broken, empty life. I didn't want to go back to the world. I didn't want to leave this place. I said, "Please, please let me stay." He shook his head gently. He said, "Not yet. There is work for you to do." I felt tears welling up again, but this time they weren't tears of shame. They were tears of desperation. I didn't want to leave him. Not now. not after finally understanding what it meant to really know him. He must have seen the fear in my eyes because he stepped closer and put both hands on my shoulders. He looked at me with an intensity that made my soul tremble. He said, "Tell my people that lukewarm is dangerous." I nodded, unable to speak. He said, "Tell them I see everything. Tell them I know the difference between performance and surrender. Tell them I'm calling them back. I'm calling them to walk with me again. Really walk with me. Not just sing about me, not just post about me, but walk with me." I could barely breathe. The weight of what he was asking felt massive. Who was I to tell anyone anything? I was the one who'd been living a lie. I was the one who'd been lukewarm. But he wasn't asking. He was commanding. And I knew, deep in my soul, that this was why I'd been allowed to come here. This was why he'd showed me everything. Not to condemn me, but to change me. To send me back with a message, a warning, a plea. He said, "Your life is not over, Emily. It's just beginning." And then he smiled again. A real smile this time. Full and warm and filled with hope. He said, "Go. And this time, live for me. Not for them. For me." I wanted to say something. I wanted to thank him. I wanted to tell him I'd do better. I wanted to promise him I wouldn't waste this second chance. But before I could speak, he said one more thing. He said, "I will be with you. Always." In the moment he said the word go, the garden began to fade. The light dimmed, the colors bled away, the music softened into silence, and I felt myself being pulled backward, away from him, away from that place, back toward the darkness. I reached out, trying to hold on to something, anything, but there was nothing to grab, just empty space, and then everything went black. The first thing I felt was pain, not emotional pain, physical pain. Sharp, burning, crushing pain in my chest, like someone had reached inside my ribcage and was squeezing my heart with both hands. I gasped, or tried to. My lungs wouldn't work right. I could feel air forcing its way in, but it felt wrong, mechanical, like my body had forgotten how to breathe on its own and something was doing it for me. My eyes were closed, but I could see light through my eyelids, harsh artificial light, not the warm golden light of the garden. This was cold, clinical, fluorescent. I heard voices, muffled at first like I was underwater, then clearer. A man's voice, urgent and loud. "We got a pulse. She's back." A woman's voice, steady but relieved. "Sinus rhythm. She's stable." Another voice, farther away. 8 minutes. She was down for 8 minutes. I tried to open my eyes, but they felt so heavy, like someone had tied weights to my eyelids. Everything hurt. My chest, my throat, my arms, even my skin hurt. It felt too tight, like I'd been stuffed back into a body that didn't fit anymore. I finally managed to crack my eyes open, just a little. The light stabbed into my brain. I squinted, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. White ceiling tiles, bright overhead lights, faces hovering over me, wearing masks and gloves. Paramedics. I was in an ambulance. One of them leaned closer, a young guy with dark hair and kind eyes. He said, "Emily, can you hear me? You're okay. You're back. Just breathe, nice and slow." But I didn't feel okay. I felt like I'd been ripped out of heaven and thrown back into hell. Not literal hell, but the emptiness, the heaviness, the suffocating, crushing weight of being alive in a broken world in a broken body. I tried to speak, but my throat was raw. Something was in my mouth. A tube. They must have intubated me. The paramedics saw me gag and said, "Hold on, we're gonna take that out. Just stay calm." They pulled the tube out and I coughed. Hard. My whole chest seized up and I thought I was going to die all over again. But I didn't. I just lay there, gasping and coughing and crying. Because I didn't want to be here. I wanted to be back there. Back in the garden. Back with him. Why did he send me back? The ambulance doors opened and cold night air rushed in. I felt them lift me, felt the gurney wheels hit the pavement, felt the jolt as they rolled me into the hospital. Everything was noise and motion and chaos. Voices shouting, monitors beeping, doors slamming. And I just closed my eyes and let the tears run down my face. Because the music was gone. That beautiful, impossible music that had filled the garden. The music I'd felt in my bones. It was gone. And all I could hear now was machines and people and the dull, relentless hum of fluorescent lights. I don't know how long I was in the emergency room. Time felt strange, stretched out and compressed at the same time. Doctors and nurses came and went. They asked me questions I couldn't answer. They poked and prodded and ran tests. And I just lay there, numb and hollow, wishing I could go back. At some point, they moved me to a room, a real room, with a bed and a window and a chair in the corner. The lights were dimmer here, quieter. I could finally breathe without feeling like my chest was going to explode. And that's when I saw her, my mom. She was sitting in the chair by the window, her face pale and streaked with tears. Her eyes were red and puffy, like she'd been crying for hours. And when she saw me looking at her, she let out a sob and rushed to my bedside. She grabbed my hand, squeezing it so tight it hurt, but I didn't pull away. I just let her hold me. She said, "Emily, oh, thank God, you came back." I tried to say something, but my voice came out broken and hoarse. "Mom." She leaned down and kissed my forehead, still crying. "I thought I lost you. I thought you were gone." I wanted to tell her I had been gone. I wanted to tell her I'd seen Jesus. I'd seen heaven. I'd seen my whole life laid out in front of me, and I'd realized how much I'd wasted. I wanted to tell her everything, but I couldn't. The words wouldn't come. All I could do was cry. She sat down on the edge of the bed, still holding my hand, and just let me cry. She didn't ask questions. She didn't try to fix it. She just stayed with me, and for the first time in years, I let her. A doctor came in a little while later. He was older, with gray hair and a calm, steady voice. He checked the monitors, looked at my chart, and then turned to me with a serious expression. He said, "Emily, you're very lucky to be alive. Your heart stopped for 8 minutes. That's a long time. Most people don't come back from that. And if they do, they usually have significant brain damage." He paused, watching me carefully. He said, "But you seem okay. Remarkably okay, actually. We're going to run some more tests, but so far, everything looks good. Do you remember what happened?" I nodded slowly. My throat still hurt, but I managed to say, "I had a panic attack. My chest hurt. I couldn't breathe." He nodded. "You went into cardiac arrest. Your friend called 911, and the paramedics got to you just in time. You're very fortunate." Fortunate. That's what he said. But I didn't feel fortunate. I felt confused, lost. Like I'd been given something precious and then had it taken away before I could fully understand it. He asked a few more questions, then told me to rest and said he'd check on me in the morning. And then he left, and it was just me and my mom again. She looked at me with so much worry in her eyes. She said, "Do you want to talk about it?" I shook my head. Not yet. I wasn't ready. I didn't even know how to begin explaining what had happened. She nodded, understanding. She said, "Okay, just rest. I'm not going anywhere." And she didn't. She stayed in that chair all night, holding my hand, watching over me. But I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw him. I saw Jesus. I saw his face. I heard his voice. "Go back. Tell them." And I kept asking myself the same question over and over. Why? Why did he send me back? What was I supposed to do now? I'd spent my whole life pretending to follow him. And now that I'd finally met him, now that I'd finally understood what it meant to really surrender, he sent me back to the one place I didn't want to be. I lay there in that hospital bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of his words pressing down on me. "Tell my people that lukewarm is dangerous. Tell them I'm calling them back. Your life is not over, it's just beginning." I didn't know how to do that. I didn't know how to be the person he wanted me to be. I didn't know how to live differently. I didn't know how to tell people the truth when I'd spent so long hiding behind a mask. But I knew one thing. I couldn't go back to the way I was before. I couldn't go back to performing. I couldn't go back to pretending. I couldn't go back to being lukewarm. Because I'd seen what that looked like from his perspective, and it was devastating. The sun started to rise outside my window. Soft gray light filtered through the blinds. My mom was asleep in the chair, her head tilted to the side, her hands still resting on the edge of my bed. And I realized something. The encounter with Jesus wasn't the miracle. I mean, it was, but it wasn't the whole miracle. The real miracle was what happened next. The real miracle was what he was going to do with me now that I was back, now that I knew the truth, now that I'd been broken and rebuilt and sent back with a message. I thought the encounter was the miracle, but the real miracle was what happened after I woke up. I stayed in the hospital for 3 days. They ran tests, monitored my heart, made sure I was stable. And the whole time, I couldn't stop thinking about what Jesus had said to me. His words echoed in my mind over and over. "Go back. Tell them." But how? How was I supposed to tell anyone? Who would believe me? And even if they did believe me, what right did I have to say anything? I was the one who'd been living a lie. I was the one who'd been lukewarm. But God didn't give me a choice. He gave me a command. And I knew deep in my soul that I couldn't ignore it. When I finally got home, the first thing I did was get on my knees. Not because I felt like I had to, but because I wanted to. For the first time in my life, I actually wanted to pray. I knelt by my bed and I just started talking to God. Not the scripted, polished prayers I used to say, not the kind of prayers I thought sounded good. Just honest, broken, real words. I told him I was sorry. I told him I'd wasted so much time. I told him I didn't know how to change, but I wanted to. I told him I was scared. Scared of failing again, scared of falling back into the same patterns, scared of being fake. And I asked him to help me, to teach me, to show me how to really walk with him. And he did. It didn't happen all at once. It wasn't like I woke up the next day and suddenly became a perfect Christian. But something had shifted inside me, something fundamental. I didn't want to perform anymore. I didn't want to impress anyone. I just wanted to know him, really know him.
So I started spending time with him every day. Real time. Not just a quick prayer before bed or a Bible verse I skimmed in the morning. I would wake up early, make coffee, sit on my couch, and just read the word. Slowly, carefully, letting it sink in. And I started to see things I'd never seen before. Verses I'd read 100 times suddenly meant something. Stories I thought I knew started to come alive. It was like I was reading the Bible for the first time. I started praying throughout the day, not just when I needed something, but just to talk to him, to thank him, to ask him what he thought about things, to invite him into my decisions, my conversations, my thoughts. And the more I did that, the more I realized how far away I'd been, how distant, how disconnected. I'd been going through the motions for so long, I didn't even know what it felt like to actually walk with God. But now I did, and it was everything I'd been missing. The changes started showing up in other areas too. I stopped scrolling through things I shouldn't be looking at. Not because I was trying to be good, but because I didn't want to anymore. I didn't want to grieve the Holy Spirit. I didn't want to put distance between me and God. And every time I felt the temptation, I'd remember standing in front of Jesus, seeing all my hidden sin laid bare. And I'd think, no, not again. I'm not doing that again. And slowly, the pull of those things started to fade. The addiction I thought I'd never break, it started losing its grip because I wasn't fighting it alone anymore. God was with me. The Holy Spirit was helping me, and I was finally letting him. I also started being honest with people, really honest. Not the fake surface level honesty where you say you're fine when you're not, but real vulnerability. The first person I talked to was my mom. I sat her down one afternoon and told her everything. I told her about the years of faking it, the emptiness, the loneliness, the sin I'd been hiding, the way I'd shut her out. And I told her I was sorry. She cried, I cried. And then she hugged me so tight I thought my ribs would crack. She said she'd known something was wrong. She'd been praying for me every single day. And hearing me finally open up, finally let her in, it was an answer to years of prayers. I also reached out to some of the people I'd hurt. The guy on the worship team I'd felt glad about when he failed. I texted him and asked if we could talk. I told him what had happened and I apologized. I told him I'd been jealous and proud and that I was wrong. He was shocked, but he forgave me, and we actually became real friends after that. I reached out to the woman from church whose husband had cancer. I found her number and called her. I told her I was sorry for brushing her off. I asked how her husband was doing, and I actually listened, really listened, and we prayed together over the phone. And when I hung up, I felt something I'd never felt before when helping someone. Joy. Real, genuine joy. Not because it made me look good, but because I actually cared. Worship changed too. The first Sunday I went back to church after the hospital, I almost didn't go on stage. I felt like a fraud, like everyone would see right through me. But then I remembered what Jesus said. Your life is not over, it's just beginning. So I went up there, and when the music started, something broke inside me. I wasn't thinking about how I sounded. I wasn't thinking about the people watching. I was thinking about him, about his face, about the way he looked at me with both grief and love, about the grace he'd shown me when I didn't deserve it. And I just started crying, right there on stage, tears streaming down my face while I sang. I didn't try to hide it. I didn't try to pull it together. I just let it happen. And you know what? People noticed. After the service, person after person came up to me and said they'd felt something different that morning. They said they could tell I meant it. They said it touched them. And I realized that's what God wanted all along.
Not a perfect performance, just a surrendered heart. A few weeks later, our pastor asked if I'd share my testimony with the church. I was terrified, but I knew I had to. So I stood up in front of everyone and told them what happened. I told them about dying, about meeting Jesus, about the life review, about being called lukewarm. And I told them the truth, that I'd been faking it, that I'd been living a double life, that I'd cared more about their opinions than God's. It was the hardest thing I'd ever done. But when I finished, the room was silent. And then people started coming forward. Young people, old people, people I'd known for years. And they were crying. And they were saying, "That's me. I've been doing the same thing." And right there, in that moment, I understood why Jesus sent me back. Not because I was special, not because I had it all figured out, but because my brokenness could help other people see their own. My story could wake people up before it was too late. Since then, I've shared my testimony dozens of times. At churches, at youth groups, at coffee shops, anywhere people will listen. And every time I do, I see the same thing. People realizing they've been lukewarm. People waking up. People deciding to stop performing and start surrendering. And that's what I want for you too. If you're watching this right now and something in this story resonated with you, I want you to know it's not an accident. God brought you here. He's speaking to you. Maybe you're like I was. Maybe you go to church every Sunday. Maybe you sing the songs and say the prayers. Maybe people think you have it all together. But deep down, you know you're just going through the motions. You know there's a gap between what you show people and what's really happening inside. And maybe you've been telling yourself it's fine, that God's grace covers it, that as long as you keep showing up, everything will be okay. But it's not okay. Lukewarm is dangerous. Jesus said it himself. Because you are lukewarm and neither hot nor cold, I will spit you out of my mouth. He doesn't want your performance. He wants your heart. He doesn't want you to sing about him. He wants you to walk with him. Really walk with him. Not just on Sundays, every single day. And I know that's scary. I know it's hard. I know it means letting go of the image you've built. It means being honest about your sin. It means surrendering control. It means actually following Jesus, not just talking about him. But I'm telling you, it's worth it. Knowing him, really knowing him, is worth more than anything this world can offer. More than approval, more than success, more than comfort, more than anything. He's calling you right now. He's calling you to come back, to stop pretending, to stop hiding, to stop settling for a fake version of faith. And if you respond, if you really surrender, your life will never be the same. Not because everything will be easy, but because you'll finally be living the life you were created for. A life with him, a life that matters, a life that's real. So I'm asking you, don't wait. Don't put it off. Don't tell yourself you'll deal with it later, because we're not guaranteed tomorrow. I wasn't supposed to come back. But God gave me a second chance, and he's giving you one too, right now, in this moment. He's waiting. Take a moment after this video and talk to God. Tell him the truth. Tell him you've been lukewarm. Tell him you want to change. Tell him you're ready to really follow him. He's been waiting, and he will meet you right where you are. If this touched your heart, send it to someone who needs hope, because there are so many people out there just like I was. People who are dying on the inside, but smiling on the outside. People who need to hear that it's not too late, that God still loves them, that he's calling them back. My name is Emily, and I died for 8 minutes, but God brought me back. Not because I deserved it, but because he had a message for his people. And that message is this: come back, stop pretending, stop performing, and start walking with him. Really walking with him, because he loves you more than you know, and he's waiting.